Imagine a crime so horrific that even the media couldn't handle it. So chilling that the police admitted that what they revealed was just the tip of the iceberg. Delving deeper could shatter anyone's sanity. Futoshi Matsunaga, a master manipulator and psychopath, managed to orchestrate unimaginable cruelty for 9 years without laying a finger on his victims. Are you curious how he pulled it off? On March 6, 2002, a young girl stumbled into a police station. Condition a harrowing sight. She was covered in wounds and bruises, clad in diapers, and her emaciated frame made her appear much younger. Desperate for help, this was her second attempt to escape a life of humiliation. She knew that if she missed this chance, there would be no third. Trauma etched deeply into her eyes. She recounted a nightmare that had become her reality. With trembling words, she pointed to Futoshi Matsunaga as the source of her suffering. The story took a chilling turn when Futoshi Matsunaga and his accomplice, Junko Ogata, arrived at the station, claiming the girl as their sister, who was in desperate need of special care. Their brazen attempt to reclaim her fell apart as the police, having already seen the girl's state and heard her account, saw through their deception. Futoshi and Junko were swiftly arrested, and the horrifying extent of Matsunaga's control and cruelty began to unravel, revealing a grim reality that surpassed all initial fears. To understand Futoshi Matsunaga, let's start with his background. Born on April 28, 1961, in Kitakyushu, Fukuoka Prefecture, Japan, his early life appeared normal. He came from a well-off family with a successful tatami mat business, enjoying a comfortable upbringing. Described as smart, charming, and good-looking, he easily won people over. However, beneath his smooth exterior lurked a darker side. Those who saw beyond his charm noticed his manipulative tendencies and a cruel streak that extended to animals and classmates. As he grew, Matsunaga's behavior became more sinister. Known as a bully, he targeted weaker peers and charmed his way out of trouble. His teenage years and adulthood were marked by a series of toxic relationships, characterized by manipulation and abuse. Expelled from high school for his involvement with a junior high student, Matsunaga married at 19, but soon began an affair with Junko Ogata, who would later become his partner in crime. By October 1983, while still married, Matsunaga reconnected with Junko Ogata, who came from a wealthy background. Despite his charm, Futoshi was abusive, subjecting Junko to severe physical and emotional torment. They had 2 sons, but the abuse persisted. When Futoshi proposed in 1984, Junko's family rejected him, aware of his cruelty. In a fit of rage, he sexually assaulted Junko's mother and manipulated Junko into leaving her family. In 1985, Futoshi opened a futon company named The World and purchased a building for it. His management was as bizarre as his personal life. He would shock employees with a stun gun while claiming to exorcise a spirit draining their fortune. This disturbing behavior, intertwined with his odd business practices, led to suspicions that the futon company was a front for money laundering. By then, Matsunaga had already swindled around 180 million yen through fraud and blackmail. In 1992, he and Junko became fugitives, appearing on Japan's most wanted list. Futoshi Matsunaga was a master of disguise and deceit. He changed identities and stories to fit his schemes, sometimes posing as a university lecturer. His manipulative tactics eventually put him on Japan's most wanted list. While on the run, Futoshi and Junko moved to Kokura, living under the alias Hashimoto family. Their first victim in this new phase was a mother of 3. Futoshi charmed her by pretending to be a wealthy single man with a sister. By 1993, he convinced her to leave her husband and children to live with him. Tragically, one of her children died under mysterious circumstances in September, with the official cause linked to undisclosed medical issues. The remaining children went to live with their father and grandfather. The mother's death in March 1994, under bizarre circumstances, involved eating her own feces before dying. Throughout their relationship, Futoshi manipulated and blackmailed her, swindling 11.8 million yen. Despite the investigation revealing she had been sending money to Futoshi, he evaded punishment due to lack of solid evidence and his refusal to cooperate. Futoshi's knack for avoiding consequences earned him a sinister reputation. By then, his finances were faltering, prompting him to seek new victims. In 1994, Futoshi Matsunaga began victimizing Kumio Toraya and his daughter. Kumio, having shared his criminal past with Matsunaga, became a target for blackmail. Futoshi held Kumio and his daughter captive, subjecting them to horrific abuse. Kumio was tortured with electric shocks, forced to eat his own feces, and his daughter was coerced into biting her father. Kumio, aged 34, died of the abuse on February 26, 1996. The daughter's torment continued after her father's death. She was subjected to severe physical and psychological abuse, including being forced to drink a stew made from her father's remains. Futoshi and Junko dismembered Kumio's body, disposing of the remains at sea. The daughter was manipulated into believing she was responsible for her father's death and forced to write a false confession. Futoshi Matsunaga targeted another woman who knew Kumio, pretending to be Yonko's brother and Kumio's daughter's uncle. He scammed her out of 5.6 million yen, then held her and her daughter captive for 7 months, subjecting them to severe abuse. In March 1997, the woman escaped by jumping from a second-floor window and ended up in a mental hospital. Her daughter was eventually released, but by then, Futoshi, Junko, and Kumio's daughter had vanished. In April 1997, Junko Ogata disappeared from her workplace. Futoshi called Junko's family, informing them of her absence and making threats. He even blackmailed her mother over the 1985 assault, but Junko remained missing. In a desperate move, Futoshi faked his own suicide, which lured Junko back, only to continue his abuse. He also raped Junko's married sister, Rieko, and extorted 63 million yen from the family using blackmail. Futoshi imposed harsh conditions on the Ogata family. He rationed their food, allowing only 1 meal a day and punishing slow eaters with electric shocks. He abused Shizumi and Rieko with electric shocks, creating a hierarchy that led to harsh punishments for the lowest-ranked family member. This control mirrored the methods of cult leaders like Shoko Asahara. On December 21, 1997, Futoshi forced Junko to use a stun gun on her 61-year-old father, Takashiga, causing his death. Shizumi's mental state deteriorated, and on January 20, 1998, Futoshi ordered Rieko and her husband Kazuya to strangle Shizumi. Rieko's hearing began to deteriorate, and on February 10, 1998, Futoshi commanded Kazuya to strangle Rieko while their 10-year-old daughter, Aya, held her down. Rieko was only 33 at the time. Kazuya was starved to death by Futoshi and died around April 13, 1998. Futoshi then forced Junko, Aya, and Kumio's daughter to kill Rieko's 5-year-old son, Yuki. On May 17, 1998, Aya strangled Yuki, while Junko and Kumio's daughter held him down. Kumio's daughter eventually strangled Aya on June 7, 1998. The remains of the victims were dismembered and boiled, with the stench becoming noticeable to other residents. The remains were disposed of in washrooms or thrown into the sea. The condominium was renovated after the murders, and Futoshi blamed Junko for the killings, leaving her as the sole survivor of her family. Matsunaga's crimes continued. In July 2000, Futoshi Matsunaga convinced another woman to go away with him, lured by the prospect of marriage. In August 2001, she gave her twin children to him and Junko. Matsunaga and Junko then convinced the woman to give them $246,580, telling her that they would need the money to bring up her children. Kumio's daughter, who was being held captive, escaped from Futoshi Matsunaga on January 30th, 2002. But Matsunaga found her again on February 15th and took her back into captivity. He then tortured the girl with electric shocks. On March 6th, the girl escaped from Matsunaga again and reported the crimes to the police. She was 17 years old at the time. The police arrested Futoshi Matsunaga and Junko the next day when they tried to retrieve the girl. The twins and the couple's 2 children were taken into police protection. They faced charges for holding a captive, but as investigations progressed, the full extent of their horrific crimes emerged. From 2002 to 2003, Futoshi and Junko were charged with 7 murders. No murder charges were brought against Kumio's daughter. Junko calmly confessed to her role in the murders. But Futoshi Matsunaga professed his innocence, insisting that the women had fabricated their stories about him. The Japanese police never recovered any human remains and found no physical evidence, so they primarily relied on the testimonies of Kumio's daughter during the investigation. On September 28, 2005, the Kokura branch of the Fukuoka District Court sentenced Futoshi and Junko to death by hanging. They appealed the verdict, and 2 years later, on September 26, 2007, the court upheld Futoshi's sentence but reduced Junko's to life imprisonment, acknowledging that Futoshi had exerted control over her. On December 12, 2011, Futoshi attempted to appeal to the Supreme Court, but his request was rejected and his death sentence was confirmed. Even though the perpetrators received their sentences, the scars remain. Kumio's daughter had to undergo extensive treatment to recover her mental state. Additionally, Futoshi and Junko's son has to live with the stigma of being the child of murderers. This case has inspired several adaptations, including the 2019 movie The Forest of Love and the 2005 book Nazotoki wa Dinner no Atode, translated as Why Did the Family Kill Each Other by Onda Riku. What makes this case particularly chilling is that Futoshi Matsunaga never directly committed the murders himself. Instead, he manipulated others into carrying out his grisly deeds. It's a case that stands out as one of the most horrifying and bizarre in Japan's history. The case of Futoshi Matsunaga is a stark reminder of how fragile the human mind can be when subjected to extreme psychological abuse. It shows us that manipulation, when taken to its darkest extreme, can turn ordinary people into instruments of destruction. As we reflect on this case, it's important to consider the signs of psychological control and coercive manipulation in our own lives and the lives of those around us. If you or someone you know is experiencing similar forms of manipulation, don't stay silent. Reach out for help. Let this be a reminder that, even in the darkest moments, there is always a way out. Awareness is the first step in breaking free from the chains of control.